Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from RAU'S IAS Study Circle.
Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an analysis of the Hindu newspaper from UPSC perspective. Today we will discuss the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 19th February 2022. And the articles that we will discuss today are displayed on your screen. So let us start the discussion. Now these two articles on page number 1 and 8 in today's newspaper are related to the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement that has been signed between India and United Arab Emirates. Now, this comprehensive economic partnership agreement that has been signed between these two countries is one of the biggest trade agreement that India has signed in the recent times. Plus, this also gains importance because of the importance that India accords to the West Asian countries, in which United Arab Emirates or UAE is one of the biggest partner of India. Further, if we look at the geopolitics of West Asia, recently Abraham Accords were signed, and which ended the rivalry between Israel and the Arab countries because of mediation by the United States of America. And accordingly, a West Asian Quad has also been formed, which is also known as Middle Eastern Quad. It involves countries like Israel, India, UAE as well as USA. That is why in the backdrop of the Middle Eastern Quad or the West Asian Quad that has been formed in the West Asia, this free trade agreement or SEPA that has been signed between India and UAE gains importance. Now the topic that we are going to discuss today is the broader importance of West Asia for India and the India-UAE relations and the broader framework of India-UAE relations. And the points that we discuss here can be important for us from General Studies paper 2 point of view in the topic international relations. So in this discussion, let us first look at what is the importance of India signing this comprehensive economic partnership agreement with UAE. Secondly, let us look at the importance of the West Asia for India. And after that, we will look at the broad contours of India-UAE relations, which are important for us from the General Studies paper 2 point of view in the topic international relations. But first, in order to understand the various aspects of Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement or what is meant by Free Trade Agreement and its different dynamics from the economy point of view, you can go through the DNS of 14 January 2022 that was taken up by Basawa sir. A link to this video will be provided in today's description box below. Now, this discussion related to free trade agreements and its economic aspect was done in the backdrop of the talks between India and United Kingdom about finalizing of a free trade agreement. And if you look at these questions, these are all related to trade agreements that India has signed or India is working upon in the past. For example, in 2017, a question was asked related to broad-based trade and investment agreement BTIA that India was discussing with European Union. If you look at this question, it was asked in the mains examination and it talked about India has failed to capitalize on free trade agreements and its various economic aspects. So free trade agreement has economic aspect as well as it has importance in the broader framework in the international relations of India. So that is why our focus in this discussion will mainly be on the focus of India on the West Asia and India's relationship with United Arab Emirates. For understanding the economic aspect, you can always go through this DNS of 14 January 2022. Coming to the free trade agreement that India has signed with the UAE, it is extremely important because the projection is that it is likely to boost trade between India and UAE from present $60 billion to about $100 billion in next 5 years, which will be a very important boost for the trade relations between India and UAE. Further, this is important because India has already been discussing the finalization of various trade agreements with UK, European Union, Australia, Israel and Canada. And in last February 2021, India had signed the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement with Mauritius. That is why when India is looking for finalization of such trade agreements, this finalization of India-UAE agreement, which has been finalized in record 80 days, is really important. If you look at the benefits that are likely to accrue because of this free trade agreement, however, more analysis related to the pros and cons or the challenges that are likely to be faced related to this finalization of free trade agreement will be seen in the analysis in the coming days. However, at present it is being understood that it will allow greater market access for Indian products like textiles, apparels, gems and jewelries, engineering products, etc. Further, 80% of India's exports to United Arab Emirates will become duty-free. And it is also expected that it will provide a huge boost to employment in India because this agreement is likely to generate about 5 lakh jobs in India in terms of gems and jewelries, textiles, engineering, services, etc. So this is some information related to free trade agreements. However, our focus in this discussion will be on the larger importance of West Asia for India and what is the focus area of India as far as West Asia is concerned. So if you look at the importance of West Asia for India, the Gulf states are important because they supply the bulk of India's oil and natural gas. And it is a very common fact that India is dependent upon crude oil requirement from imports, and these imports are mainly from the West Asian nations. That is why this region becomes really important as far as India's economic diplomacy is concerned or India's energy diplomacy is concerned. The second importance of the West Asia as far as India is concerned is the diaspora of India that lives in the West Asia. That is, the West Asian countries host the largest Indian diaspora in the world. Besides the crude oil requirements and the diaspora of India that lives in the West Asian region, this region is also important for trade and investment because we have already seen that a free trade agreement has been finalized between India and UAE, which highlights the importance that India accords to its relations with the United Arab Emirates. And also, this region, which is a part of India's extended neighborhood, is crucial for India's security calculations, especially in the backdrop of the things that are happening in Afghanistan and also the geopolitics that is unfolding in the West Asia, especially after the formation of the Middle Eastern Quad and the finalization of the Abraham Accords. So if you divide the importance of West Asia for India in different parts, first and foremost is the oil and gas or the crude oil imports. This region is particularly important because it meets major share of India's energy needs and contributes to about 60% of India's total imports of crude oil and over 85% of India's liquefied natural gas requirements. Further, if you look at the contribution of different countries, Saudi Arabia used to be India's largest supplier of crude oil. However, presently, Iraq is the largest supplier. Few years back, Iran used to be the largest supplier of crude oil to India, but after the withdrawal of the United States of America from the Iran nuclear deal, sanctions were imposed, and that is why India had to diversify its imports from Iran to other countries, and that is why Iraq has now emerged as the largest supplier of crude oil to India. If you look at the diaspora and the remittances, there are around 8 to 9 million Indians who live in West Asia, which is one of the largest in the world. And if you look at the diaspora that is living in different countries, it is about 2.6 million in Saudi Arabia, 2.5 million in UAE, around 8 lakh in Kuwait, as well as 7 lakh in Qatar. So this is the level of diaspora that India has in the West Asian region, and that is why this region becomes really important. Now, this diaspora, besides being important for India's soft power diplomacy, is also important because it sends remittances back to India, and that is why they have a very important economic contribution to India. Now, if you look at this, India has received around $83 billion remittances in 2020, according to the World Bank report. And majority of these remittances that were sent back to India were from the West Indian diaspora that is living in these West Asian nations. Further, India receives largest remittances from the United Arab Emirates, and this is likely to gain further boost because of the free trade agreement that has been signed between India and UAE. If you look at the remittances and its importance to India, it accounts for about 3% of India's GDP or gross domestic product. So this is the importance of remittances to India, and that is why the diaspora that lives in West Asia and sends back money to India is very, very important and crucial for India's relations with the West Asia. Further, if you look at another important aspect of India's relationship with West Asian countries, it is the trade and investment. And in terms of trade, India's trade with the West Asian nations can be seen in this particular graph, where UAE stands to be the largest trading partner of India in the West Asian countries. So at the end of the fiscal year 2022, the value of trade between India and the UAE was approximately around $60 billion, as we have already seen, and India aims to increase this bilateral trade between India and UAE to about $100 billions in the next 5 years because of the finalization of this free trade agreement. Further, if you look at India and UAE's trade relations, UAE is India's third largest trading partner currently, and it is the second largest export destination after the United States of America. As far as Saudi Arabia, which is also an important country in West Asia, is concerned, it is India's fourth largest trading partner. Further, if you look at investments, the UAE India Infrastructure Investment Fund aims at a target of about 75 billion US dollars to support investment in India's infrastructure, which is very crucial for India's infrastructure development. Further, Saudi Arabia, which is also a prominent economy in the West Asian region, has pledged an investment of about $100 billion in India in various sectors such as petrochemicals, infrastructure, manufacturing, refining, and mining. Now, this brings us to India UAE relations now. Now, what is the foundation of India UAE relations? So, the main importance that both these countries accord to each other is highlighted by UAE's economic vision of 2030 that has been unfolded recently, with India's priority that is given to the extended neighborhood in its West Asia policy. So both these policies of India and UAE highlight the importance that India and UAE relations have in the West Asian region. Further, both these countries are collaborating in terms of security of Gulf and Indian Ocean region, and both recognize that the security of the Gulf and the Indian Ocean are indivisible. Further, both these countries are wary of the threats that are posed by non-state violent extremists to their respective interests. A case in point is the recent attack by the Houthi rebels in UAE on the Indians. So if you look at the economic basis of the relationship between India and the UAE has been according importance to India since 2010. And it was highlighted in the UAE's Vision 2021 that was first unfolded in 2010. Now, this was primarily because the UAE wanted to diversify from an oil economy into knowledge economy. And that is why the UAE's Vision 2021 mapped six priority areas for attaining its developmental objectives. These were a cohesive society with its distinct identity, public safety and sustainable environment, infrastructure with world-class healthcare and education system, and this was to be done to turn the country into a competitive knowledge economy for a desired outcome of peace, security, and prosperity with dignity. Further, in line with the Vision 2021, UAE has now come out with UAE Economic Vision 2030, and it aims at a long-term economic diversification strategy focused on advancing knowledge industries by building a skilled workforce, world-class infrastructure, and an efficient, globally integrated business environment. Now, we all are aware that the West Asian economies are majorly oil economies. That is, all their wealth has been generated because of the oil in the past decades. However, now these countries are also looking to diversify. And that is why such economic visions are being brought out by countries like UAE or Saudi Arabia, which aim at diversifying their present level of economies. And that is why they want to focus on knowledge economy more. And in this particular pursuit of these countries of becoming a knowledge economy, diversifying from the crude oil economy, India remains a very important partner for United Arab Emirates. Now, besides the economic collaboration, security and geopolitical outlook is also one of the important pillars of foundation of India-UAE relations. So both these countries recognize the security of the Gulf and the Indian Ocean region are indivisible. Further, both appreciate the threat posed by non-state violent extremists to their respective interests. We've already discussed that the recent attacks by the Houthi rebels of Yemen in UAE was a case in point. And because of this realization of the security that has to be provided to the Indian Ocean region and the threat posed by non-state violent extremists, both these countries are now cooperating on defense cooperation in maritime sphere, on counterterrorism, as well as other security related aspects. So these are the foundational pillars, that is economic relations as well as security and the geopolitical outlook. Further, if you are aware, recently the West Asian Quad was finalized, of which India, UAE, Israel, as well as United States of America are partners. Now this Quad is also being seen as the shaping up of a new security architecture in the West Asian region, and that is why it becomes important. Further, we all are aware that a Quad has already been formed in the Indo-Pacific region, which is also providing importance to India's vision of the free and open Indo-Pacific region. Similarly, this formation of West Asian Quad or the Middle Eastern Quad provides India an important position in the geopolitics of the West Asian region because of its alignment with the United States of America, Israel, and UAE, which is seen as the end of Israel-Arab rivalry in the West Asian region after the finalization of Abraham Accords because of the mediation of United States of America. Further, if we look at the areas of cooperation and if we focus on investments, the UAE's investments have topped about $11 billion, making it ninth largest source of foreign direct investment in India. Further, the UAE's biggest sovereign wealth fund are seeing India as a key growth driver and targets for their outward investments into India. Further, India has proposed 100% tax exemption for their interest, dividends, and capital gains income in respects of the investments that are made in infrastructure and other select sectors before March 31st, 2024. So, this will be a boost to these investors in India. Further, both these are focusing on advanced technology and knowledge economy. As we have already seen that UAE is trying to diversify into a knowledge economy from the present oil-based economy. And that is why UAE is providing or stepping up efforts to invest in the development of knowledge economy by expanding golden visa residency permits in order to attract best minds to their country in order to fuel this knowledge economy. And these 10-year visas will be granted to doctors, engineers, PhD scholars, specialists in high-end technology fields such as artificial intelligence, big data, virology, and epidemiology. Besides the investments and the focus on the boosting of knowledge economy, both these countries are also collaborating in the sphere of space, and collaboration has been witnessed between the UAE Space Agency and India's ISRO. Further, both these agencies have developed the nanosatellite and Knife 1. Also, both these space agencies are collaborating for the United Arab Emirates Mars mission. If you look at the defense and the security aspect, both these countries are collaborating in terms of a bilateral exercise by the name Desert Eagle that is conducted between Indian Air Force and the UAE's Air Force. Further, both these are involved in the joint naval exercise Gulf Star 1, which started in 2018, and it is seen as important for the maritime security cooperation. Further, regarding the security and the defense cooperation, one of the issues that comes up between India and UAE is related to Pakistan. And for that, UAE has said that Pakistan will be forbidden to use the UAE's territory from anti-India activities. This is a very important move by the United Arab Emirates. Further, UAE has responded with support for Jammu and Kashmir's reorganization, that is the abrogation of Article 370. Further, you might be aware that UAE is a member of the Organization of Islamic Countries, which keeps on bringing up the Kashmir issue from time to time. And that is why such a response by the UAE regarding support for India's reorganization of Jammu and Kashmir, especially after the abrogation of Article 370, is a positive sign for India-UAE relations. Also, UAE has extradited various fugitive economic offenders like Michael in the Augusta helicopter case. And also, we are aware that the West Asian Quad has been formed because of the Abraham Accords that were finalized, and this is further likely to improve the economic as well as strategic cooperation. So these are few areas of cooperation in terms of investment, the cooperation in terms of knowledge economy, space cooperation, as well as defense and security cooperation. Now, besides these strengths or areas of cooperation, there are certain challenges that need to be addressed. However, if you compare the strength in the cooperation as compared to the challenges that are there in the relation, the strengths definitely outweigh the challenges that exist. Let us look at these challenges now. So I've already highlighted that UAE is a part of Organization of Islamic Countries, which frequently raises Kashmir issue on its platform. However, UAE has assured and provided support to India's move of abrogation of Article 370 and reorganization of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. Also, UAE has become or it has developed as a seat of underworld and organized crime. In this line, various important underworld functionaries like Dawood Ibrahim, etc., are operating from Dubai. Also, UAE is known to be a hub of money laundering that is a cause of concern for India. And at the same time, the Arab-Iran rivalry, which we are witnessing in the case of Yemen, which was also seen in the case of the Houthi rebels, which conducted attacks in UAE, will also pose a challenge for balancing of India's relations between UAE and Iran. Also, you might be aware that India has had good relations with both UAE as well as Iran. However, if Arab-Iran rivalry further increases, India will have to balance its relations between these two. That is the UAE, which is one of the important Arabic countries, while Iran, which is also another pole in the West Asian geopolitics. So these are a few challenges that India needs to straighten out. So in this discussion, we have seen the importance that India accords to the West Asia, or what is the importance of West Asia to India. Further, we have seen the different pillars of importance of West Asia, for example, diaspora, the investments, the remittances that are sent back, and also we have seen the different dimensions of the India-UAE relations. Now, based on this discussion and the points that we have discussed, you can attempt this practice question, which reads: mutually reinforcing economic visions and compatible geopolitical outlooks have laid the basis for a more robust and promising partnership between India and UAE. Discuss. So you can attempt this question and write an answer using the points that we have discussed. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This article on page number 6 has been written in the context of a new scheme that has been launched by the UGC, that is University Grants Commission. And this scheme is known as Academic Bank of Credit Scheme, or the ABC scheme. And in this article, the author has analyzed the various benefits of the ABC scheme and also some of the associated issues that are likely to be faced in terms of implementation of this ABC scheme at a university level. The points that we discuss here are related to higher education, which forms an important part for us in the General Studies paper 2, because education is a separate topic that has been mentioned in the GS paper 2 of the mains examination. That is why we need to be aware of the basics of this ABC scheme and also what are its advantages as well as likely challenges that are to be faced while implementing this scheme. Now, this UGC's Academic Bank of Credit scheme is unique because presently, if a student is enrolled in a particular university, he or she will have to pass the courses that are floated by that university and complete a minimum number of credits that are required to be completed for getting a degree from this university. However, this scheme that is launched by the UGC, that is the ABC scheme, provides flexibility to the students in terms of pursuing courses even outside the university in which they are enrolled. For example, if a student is enrolled in University A, can also pursue some of the courses from University B and earn credits based on the enrollment in some of these courses in the University B. That is, all the points that a person earns from the other university will also be counted in terms of awarding of degree in the university in which the student is enrolled. And that is why this is a very unique kind of thing that has been provided by the UGC's Academic Bank of Credit scheme. Now, this scheme has been introduced in line with the National Education Policy 2020. Now, this policy provides for holistic and multidisciplinary education. Now, this scheme gains importance because it provides the opportunity to the students to pursue courses other than the streams in which they are enrolled. For example, if a student from humanities background wants to pursue some courses related to science, that student can pursue these courses under this ABC scheme. So let us look at what exactly is this ABC scheme. Now, in this ABC scheme, an academic bank of credit has been created. And this academic bank of credits is a virtual digital storehouse that contains the information of the credits that are earned by an individual student throughout their academic journey. Now, this academic bank of credits shall provide to every student the facility to open unique or individual academic bank account in a digital format. And an important aspect of this ABC scheme is that when a student pursues any course or clears exams, credits will be automatically awarded to them in this ABC bank. And institutions need to fill out the details and upload the deposits in the student's academic credit bank accounts on this digital platform. So whatever credits that student is earning in particular course will be entered into this ABC account of a student. Now, this ABC will allow the students of undergraduate and postgraduate degree courses to exit the course and enter within a stipulated period. And the student can earn up to 50% of the credits from outside the college or university where she or he is enrolled for the degree or diploma program. And this primarily is one of the most unique features of the ABC scheme. That is, a student who is enrolled in a particular university can earn up to 50% of the credits from outside universities or colleges. For example, if a student is enrolled in IIT, that student can earn up to 50% of the credits from courses outside IITs. That is why this provides the kind of flexibility. And this flexibility is provided because if a student is pursuing science related courses, that student can also opt for courses related to humanities outside that particular university. And that is the advantage of this ABC scheme. Let us look at, in this context, some of the advantages as well as some of the disadvantages that are likely to come up in the implementation of such a scheme. Now, if you look at the advantages of this ABC scheme, One of the biggest advantages is that it provides option for the students to exit and enter. That is, if any student needs to get back to their education after a break or has to relocate to another city, then they can easily carry forward their completed credits. Second important advantage of this particular scheme is that it provides wider choice to the students. That is, the students can also take up courses from universities other than the ones in which they are enrolled. For example, if a student is formally enrolled in University A but chooses to do some courses from University B and some more from University C and so on, all of these would be counted towards the student's degree. That is the level of flexibility that will be provided. And at the same time, these students can join online courses that are offered by various online portals that have been created by the Government of India. For example, the Swayam portal and the NPTEL, that is the National Program on Technology Enhanced Learning, as well as add these credits into their ABC account or the academic bank credit account. Further, another important advantage of such a scheme is that it reduces the burden on the institutions as well. That is, it reduces the burden on any single institute to float an unmanageable number of courses and increase the competition among the institutes. Now, for example, if a humanities related college is not equipped with providing courses related to science, so in that case, this kind of flexibility that is available to students will not put burden on the college related to humanities to float the science related courses. That is why this is the kind of flexibility that is created because of this academic bank credit scheme. Now, besides the likely advantages, there are certain disadvantages that are likely to be faced while implementation of this scheme. First disadvantage is related to the grade inflation that will be witnessed because of the implementation of this scheme. And this is because of the various open online courses like the Swayam and the NPTEL that are floated by the Government of India. Now, these are designed for large enrollments, and the success of these courses will be counted based on the performance of the students in the final assessment. So these courses would like to provide easy marking to the students, and that is why they will provide easy grades to the students to show their success. And that is how, if the students will enroll in some of the courses related to these platforms, it will be easy for these students to get higher grades. And that is why it is being said that there is likely to be witnessed a grade inflation because of these open online courses. And associated with this grade inflation is the likely dilution of the quality of the degrees that will be earned by the students. For example, if a student is enrolled in premier institutes like IITs or Indian Institute of Science and Research, he or she may find it tempting to opt out of a challenging course in his or her institute and use the ABC scheme to replace it with an equivalent course from another university which that student finds to be easier to score. And that is why one of the challenges is the dilution of the quality of the degrees that are provided by certain premier institutes. Also, it is likely to reduce the teaching posts in small institutes. Now, it has been provided in the ABC scheme that students can avail up to 50% of their credits from other institutes. However, the number of teaching posts in any higher education institute are calculated on the basis of student enrollment numbers. And when a large fraction of the students will not enroll for the courses offered by them, it might result in the contraction of the teaching posts in some smaller institutes. Now, overall, this scheme has been appreciated in terms of providing the flexibility to the students to pursue courses outside their enrolled university. However, because of the difference in the quality between different institutes in India, the likely implementation will create problems in terms of quality as well as grade inflation, etc. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This article on page number 11 is related to the newly unveiled hydrogen policy rules of Government of India. Now, India has been focusing on achieving the net zero emissions by 2070, and that is why green hydrogen is being touted as one of the important fuels for the future of energy in India. And in this backdrop, the government has unveiled the hydrogen policy. So in this discussion, we will first look at what are the basics of this policy, or what are the incentives that Government of India is providing, and after that we'll try and understand the issue related to green hydrogen from our exam perspective. What is green hydrogen, how it is different from other types of hydrogen, how it is produced, and all these things which can be important for us from the preliminary examination perspective. So let us look at all these aspects in this discussion. Now, if you look at the green hydrogen and green ammonia policy that has been unveiled by the Government of India, it aims at boosting the domestic production of green hydrogen to 5 million tons by 2030, and it aims at making India an export hub for clean fuel. This new policy offers about 25 years of free power transmission for any new renewable energy plants set up to supply power for green hydrogen production before July 2025. Now, this simply means that if a renewable energy plant is set up in one state and it aims at supplying this particular fuel for the production of green hydrogen in another state, then interstate transmission charges will not be imposed on such kind of transmission of electricity from one state to another, especially for green hydrogen production. And this incentive is available if the renewable energy plant is set up before July 2025, and it will be available for up to 25 years of free power transmission. Further, this policy is going to make it more economical for key users of hydrogen and ammonia, such as oil refining, fertilizers, and steel sector, to produce green hydrogen for their own use. Now, presently, what is happening is that in order to produce hydrogen for the requirements in oil refining, fertilizer industry, and steel sector, these are producing the hydrogen using natural gas or naphthalene, which is not a green fuel. That is why providing incentives for setting up of renewable energy plants for the production of green hydrogen is seen as an incentive, and these sectors will now turn towards such kind of production of hydrogen, which is known as green hydrogen. Also, to facilitate easy implementation of such things, a single portal will be provided for all clearances that are required for setting up of green hydrogen production. Also, facilities will be provided to the producers to put any surplus renewable energy generated within the discoms for up to 30 days and use it as required. In order to promote exports, the port authorities will also provide land at applicable charges to green hydrogen and green ammonia producers to set up bunkers near ports for storage prior to export. And the government of India has said that the government is eyeing the exports markets of Japan as well as Germany in this regard. So these are some of the incentives that have been provided by the government of India for the production of green hydrogen. Now, after this, let us look at what exactly is meant by this green hydrogen, how it is produced, and what are the important aspects that can be asked to us in the preliminary examination. Let us look at these aspects now. We all are aware that India is heavily dependent upon fossil fuels like coal and crude oil for its energy requirements. Further, India is now setting ambitious targets to meet or decarbonize its economy, and in this line we have set up a goal of net zero emissions by 2070, which the Prime Minister of India had recently unveiled at the Glasgow Climate Conference. This makes us realize the importance of green hydrogen, and in this line we need to understand the basic things related to green hydrogen. How is it important? What are the hurdles in realization of full potential of green hydrogen as a fuel? And also, what are the measures that the government of India can deploy for long-term and short-term gains for replacing the traditional fuels by the way of green hydrogen? Now, the points that we discuss here can be important for us from General Studies Paper 3 point of view in science as well as environment. So, first thing that we need to understand is what is green hydrogen, or what exactly is the hydrogen fuel. And then we will look at various other important aspects. Further, in the prelims examination also in the past years, the trend has been that questions have been asked from those new fuels that are in news which aim at decarbonizing or reducing the pollution. And that is why we had this question in the year 2015, and this question was asked in 2019. The first question that was asked in 2015 is related to fuel cell technology, which exactly is related to the hydrogen fuel itself. And the question that was asked in 2019 was related to hydrogen enriched CNG or compressed natural gas. So we realized that new kinds of fuel which are energy efficient, which aim at decarbonizing and reducing the pollution, are important for us from the prelims examination perspective. In this regard, we need to understand some basic facts related to the hydrogen as a fuel. Now, if we look at hydrogen as a fuel, it is not found freely in the nature. So this also is one of the biggest challenge for utilization of hydrogen as a fuel. And it is found only in combined form with other elements. One of the famous example is water, whose chemical formula is H2O. So hydrogen is found in a combined form with oxygen in the water. And that is why even though hydrogen is a clean molecule, the process of extracting it is energy intensive. And one of the technology that is deployed for extracting hydrogen fuel from these compounds is electrolysis of water. But before that, let us understand what are the types of hydrogens. So first type of hydrogen is gray hydrogen.
Second that we know is blue hydrogen, and third is green hydrogen. It does not mean that this is the color of that particular hydrogen. It is the way in which the hydrogen is extracted from these combined molecules or these compounds. So let us look at grey hydrogen. Now presently, India's hydrogen kitty or the hydrogen fuel that India uses is composed of the grey hydrogen. And because this hydrogen is extracted from the hydrocarbons like fossil fuels and natural gas, and in this line, the biggest concern that we have is the byproduct that is generated, that is carbon dioxide. So that is the issue with the grey hydrogen that is presently being deployed in India. Then we have the blue hydrogen. It is sourced from fossil fuels and emissions include carbon dioxide, which are captured and stored. So this is in a way better as compared to the grey hydrogen, because in this case the carbon dioxide or the carbon monoxide that is produced while producing hydrogen as a fuel is stored. That is, it is not emitted into the environment. But the best kind of fuel is green hydrogen because it is generated by the process of electrolysis by utilizing the energy that is renewable energy. So for the process of electrolysis, the electricity that is used is actually generated from the renewable energy. So the electricity splits the water into hydrogen and oxygen, and the byproducts in this case are water and water vapor, which we all are aware do not contribute to pollution or increase in the greenhouse gases. Now hydrogen is particularly important for India because India's electricity is heavily coal dependent, and hydrogen has the potential of replacing the fossil fuels and addressing the issues of pollution as well as price rise of the crude oil. Then we all are aware that hydrogen is abundantly found in the nature, and that makes it really important. Plus, if you burn hydrogen as a fuel, it is 2 to 3 times more efficient than burning petrol. Further, it can have a boost for India's transportation sector, especially in the sectors like iron, steel and chemical sectors, because these contribute to about 1/3 of India's greenhouse gas emissions. So that is how a key role can be played by hydrogen as a fuel or as a clean fuel. And as we have already learned about the advantages of green hydrogen, it is a clean burning molecule and it can decarbonize a range of sectors including iron, steel, chemical and transportation. Another important thing about green hydrogen is that the renewable energy will be used for the process of electrolysis to break hydrogen from the compounds in which it is found. And India already has a huge amount of renewable energy generation which can be utilized for the production of green hydrogen. We all are aware that India aims at decarbonizing by 2050. Already we have an ambitious goal of 175 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity by 2022. And in this line, India has also announced in the Union Budget of 2021 and 22 1,500 crore rupees for renewable energy development and hydrogen energy mission. And in this, green hydrogen is one of the important focus. Now, fuel cell is one of the technology that utilizes hydrogen as a fuel for generating electricity. So simply a fuel cell is one which converts chemical energy into electrical energy using oxidizing agents through an oxidation reduction reaction. That is the simple basic fact that we need to know. Now, fuel cell based vehicles mostly combine hydrogen and oxygen to produce electricity to power the motor or electric motor in the transportation vehicles which deploy these fuel cell. And the biggest advantage of using a fuel cell is that the byproduct that is generated is only water vapor. So that it does not amount to any kind of pollution or greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, etc. Further, the hydrogen fuel cells or fuel cell cars have a near zero carbon footprint. And hydrogen is also 2 to 3 times efficient as compared to burning the petrol because an electric chemical reaction is much more efficient than the combustion as a process. So these are basic facts regarding the fuel cell. This brings us to what are the challenges in the production of hydrogen fuel. We all are aware that it is the cost of production of hydrogen fuel that is the biggest cause of concern. And electrolysis is one process that is deployed for breaking the water molecule and bringing out hydrogen. So manufacturing and deployment of electrolyzers will have to increase at an unprecedented rate by 2050. Further, 70% of the investment that is required to produce the green hydrogen through electrolysis process goes into generating renewable energy. So, because the green hydrogen is the one which is produced by the electrolysis process in which renewable energy generated electricity is used, that is why in such a case, 70% of the investment goes into generation of renewable energy. Now, India has the advantage that India has already been focusing hugely on the generation of renewable energy, and that can be deployed for the generation of green hydrogen, which is sometimes seen as a future fuel. Now, for transportation, we are aware that the fuel cells technology is being deployed. And for this, hydrogen must be competitive with the conventional fuels and technologies on a per mile basis. Otherwise, the adoption of the fuel cell technology will not be on a larger scale. And the fuel cells which are used to convert the hydrogen fuel to usable energy for cars is still considered to be expensive and not at par with petrol or diesel that is currently being deployed in the internal combustion engines. And last but not the least, the infrastructure that is required for refueling hydrogen into the fuel cell cars is still widely underdeveloped. So these are few challenges in the adoption of hydrogen as a fuel because the process of generation itself is costly at times, and also the adoption of technology has bit of hurdles because of the high cost related to infrastructure development related to hydrogen fuel. Now, what are the benefits of using green hydrogen for India? So let us look at these points. We all are aware that India is the world's fourth largest energy consuming country after China, United States of America, and the European Union. And according to International Energy Agency's forecast, India will overtake European Union to become the world's third largest consumer by the year 2030. And in this line, the green hydrogen can drive India's transition to clean energy and combat climate change. We are already aware that India has ambitious targets under the Paris Climate Deal, where India has pledged to reduce the emission intensity of its economy by 33 to 35% from 2005 levels by 2030. Also, India has embraced the net zero emissions target by 2070 at the recent Glasgow summit of the UNFCCC. Besides this, the adoption of green hydrogen for India provides it an advantage of reducing the annual import bills by developing a value chain for hydrogen from its production to its diverse application. And this will include technologies like production technologies, storage, transportation and distribution, infrastructure, which will include ports, refueling stations, vehicular applications, and electricity grid or gas grid. So, these are some of the stages in full utilization of green hydrogen as a fuel. That is, we need newer technologies, we need opportunities and technologies for storage, transportation and distribution, and also infrastructure for refueling, as well as application of this technology in the vehicles as well as in the electricity grid. Further, we need localization of electrolyzers production and the development of green hydrogen projects. Because electrolysis is the process that is deployed for generation of green hydrogen using renewable energy. Further, we all are aware that the Union government had announced in its budget of 2021 and 22 the National Hydrogen Energy Mission. This brings us to some of the steps that the Government of India can take to improve the utilization of green hydrogen as a fuel in the near future. So we need to have a long-term plan to incorporate green hydrogen as an alternative fuel, replacing the traditional fuel that has been used in the Indian economy. In this line, the government funding and the long-term policies that attract private investments within the standards and the progressive compliance frameworks is the need of the hour. That is, the government needs to create policies for funding as well as a regulatory framework for the utilization of green hydrogen as a fuel. Further, the government needs to identify key areas in which the transition to the green hydrogen as a fuel will be low in cost. And these include refineries, fertilizers, natural gas plants, and these should be mandated to use hydrogen to bring down the costs as part of the near-term goals or short-term goals. And in the long run, the state as well as the central government should provide incentives to the shipping industry, aviation industry, and energy storage industry in order to meet the long-term requirements of adoption of green hydrogen as a fuel. And if the government enforces time-bound and mid and long-term policies, it would inspire the private sector investments in the green fuel. Further, you should be aware that the Indian Oil Corporation has floated global tenders to set up two green hydrogen generation units at Mathura and Panipat refineries. Already we are aware that the Government of India has highlighted through the budget that we have a national hydrogen mission which will outline the roadmap for the adoption of green hydrogen as a fuel. Plus, we all are aware that because India is already having huge potential for renewable energy production that can be utilized for the production of green hydrogen in the near future. So these are few aspects related to green hydrogen as a fuel. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This article on page number 5 is related to the Great Backyard Bird Count event that has started in Mysuru. Now, this becomes important because it is related to the bird biodiversity conservation. And if you look at the previous year question papers in the year 2015, a question was asked regarding an organization by the name BirdLife International. That is why you can expect such questions in the upcoming prelims examination regarding the Great Birdyard Bag Count event and some of the facts related to this particular event. So let us try and understand what can be asked related to this in the preliminary examination. Now, if you look at the Great Backyard Bird Count, it is simply an event that engages bird watchers of all ages in counting the birds to create a real-time snapshot of bird populations. In this regard, the participants are asked to count birds on one or more days for the 4-day event and report their sightings online on a website by the name birdcount.org. Now, in this, anyone can participate from experts to layman to beginning bird watchers, etc. Now, regarding the Great Backyard Bird Count, it was launched in 1998 by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and National Audubon Society. Now, it was the first online citizen science project, which is also referred to as community science, to collect data on wild birds and to display the results in near real time. In 2009, Birds Canada, which is also an organization, also joined this project, and it provided and expanded the capacity to support the participation in Canada. In 2013, it became a global project when it started entering the data into eBird, which is the world's largest biodiversity related citizen science project. Now, this brings us to what is this eBird? Now, regarding this eBird, it is amongst the world's largest biodiversity related science projects with more than 100 million bird sightings contributed annually by eBird watchers around the world. It is basically a collaborative enterprise with hundreds of partner organizations, thousands of regional experts, and hundreds of thousands of users. And it is managed by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And this event is presently being conducted in Mysuru in India. Now, regarding this, a question can be expected in the examination that the Great Backyard Bird Count is an initiative of the BirdLife International, which will be wrong in the first place because it has a different kind of setup and it has been set up by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, the National Audubon Society, and Birds Canada. So these are the three contributing organizations which have created this event. And regarding the eBird, we all are aware that it is a database which is managed by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. With this, we conclude today's discussion, and this is the question for the day.